Are you dreaming of a cruise but feeling anxious about setting sail? Whether it's concerns about seasickness, safety, or just the unknown, we're here to put your mind at ease. In this episode of Talk Travel to Me, I'm sitting down with my friend and fellow podcaster Emily Aborn, who has been intrigued by the idea of cruising but has been too nervous to hop on board due to a whole host of worries. Together, we'll break down the most common cruise fears and share expert trips to help turn hesitation into excitement, hopefully. From motion sickness remedies to insider insights on ship safety and planning the perfect itinerary, I'll help you trade panic for paradise. So grab your life vest, just kidding, you won't need it, and get ready to seize the day.
Ready for your fast pass to unforgettable adventures? Welcome to Talk Travel to Me. Featuring our Mickey Guru Travel Company expert travel advisors, this podcast will guide you in traveling with more ease, confidence, and a sprinkle of magic. Tune in for unique insights, insider info, tips, and personal travel stories that'll transform your journeys into exhilarating moments and lifelong memories. Fasten your seatbelt, grab your passport, let's embark, and let's talk travel.
Welcome to Talk Travel to Me, Emily.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kristy. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I should start marketing myself as the anxious podcast guest because I have a lot of them.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very interesting. I know that we've talked about cruising over the years, kind of in passing, because we've known each other for a long time now. And you've always been kind of skirting it. But when I put out the call for someone to talk to me about this on an episode, you were the first person. So awesome. I'm so glad.
Well, truth be told, I want you to convince me not to be anxious and worried about it. So,
Okay. All right. That's a good thing to note. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you have really enjoyed about vacations that you've taken in the past, things that didn't bring about that anxiety, maybe.
okay, I'll start with those. So, some of my best travel adventures were kind of like solo expeditions. I went with a group of people when I was 13 years old to India, but even as a kid, I was kind of like on my own a little bit. So that was a
Wow.
really fun cross the world experience. And then when I was in my 20s, I went to France for 4 months and I spent a lot of time in France. I got to go to Spain and England and Germany and Italy and all the surrounding countries right there. So that was a lot of fun. And again, like I just kind of got to dance to the beat of my own drum and travel and see what I wanted to. So those are the ones that stick out in my mind, but there's lots of little fun things here and there that I've done.
This is fascinating to me. I knew that you had spent some time in France, but the idea as a young teenager, you were totally cool with going kind of solo to India. My anxiety goes off the charts. I'm like, no, 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 get you on a cruise ship. It's much smaller and safer. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
that's
I don't
amazing.
really know how I did it. Uh,
I love that. So, for all of our listeners, I have kind of shared with Emily ahead of time that the goal of this episode is not for me to convince or strong arm Emily onto a cruise ship. That is never my goal with any conversation or with clients or anything like that. Like, I want to match you with a vacation option that is going to light you up. So, if that happens to be exploring in Finland, that's where I want to help you get to. But I feel like with the cruising industry, especially, lots of people just don't understand it. So when people think of cruising, they picture the Titanic, right? We've all seen it, heard about it.
we know how it ends.
Yeah, we know how it ends. Although I do think that there was plenty of room on that door for Jack. So it's kind of a joke that we have all the time around here that like if Rose really wanted to save Jack, she could have, and there was a reason that he didn't make it. We don't know why. Um, but that there's a lot of just misconceptions out there. The media, as with a lot of things, the media tells one story that they want to tell, and it's not always the whole picture. So that's kind of our goal here today. Emily shared her top things that brought up anxiety for her. And so we're going to kind of just go through those, talk it through, and we'll see at the end if you feel better or worse, which I hope that's not the case. But we want to just have that conversation because I know it's very, very common for sure. So, Emily, the first thing that you mentioned to me was a fear of motion sickness. Do you get motion sickness on land? How does that show up for you?
I get motion sickness in cars, on sometimes on airplanes at like parts of the ride, and then also sometimes in an elevator, which is super weird. I know, but that will also give me motion sickness. So, like recently, my friend was having her 40th birthday party and she invited a whole bunch of us to go on a cruise. And I was like, oh, I can't. I get motion sick because that was in my head. So, I want to hear about if there are ways to overcome that that don't involve the drowsy Dramamine, which is definitely a
Hmm.
remedy that works, but I don't want to be asleep the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So there's a couple things that come to mind right off the bat in terms of prevention. And that's where I generally start the conversation. The number one thing to know is that not all cruise ships are created equally. So you can go on a brand new ship. Like I recently was on Icon of the Seas, which is the largest cruise ship in the world at the moment. It's a Royal Caribbean ship. I felt very little movement. In fact, if you weren't looking at the ocean, like on the exterior of the ship, you would not even know you were on a ship.
Mm.
So it was that smooth. And the bulk of the cruise ships that have been built since about 2005 and beyond really have very little movement because of how they're structured. If you can imagine like a humpback whale and they have like the long fins, that's what the cruise ships have that extend in the water to help with that stabilization so that you're not having it kind of rolling around on the ocean. And then there are other things built into the front of the ship and the back of the ship that do it for the other direction so that it's really stable in most waters. So, right out the bat, when I have someone that has any concern about motion, we look at the newer ships, the 2005 and newer, and it just keeps getting better. So that's something that is a definite to keep in mind. The other thing in that area is when you pick the itinerary, you think about where they're likely to have the most calm waters.
Oh, yeah.
So Boston to Bermuda is a very popular cruise option from New England because um, it's quicker. You don't have to fly anywhere. People can just drive into Boston, get on the ship, and go. It is the worst option for someone that has motion sickness by far. Is that where your friend was going to go on the 40th birthday?
I think I cannot remember actually for the life of me, but I do feel like it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The water in the Atlantic in that area is just especially rough. I'm definitely not an expert in, I don't even know if it's that water water safety or geology is. I'm like, no, it's not rocks. I'm not a
Bumpiness of the water.
Yes, yes, exactly. But there is a noted thing that happens in that area that makes it especially difficult to traverse. The other thing that happens, unfortunately, with Boston cruises is they're all the old ships because that port is not large enough to hold the big ships.
Hmm.
So I have only had out of more than 25 cruises personally, I've only been on one that was a problem, and it was the Norwegian Pearl, Boston to Bermuda.
Wow.
And we ended up hitting a storm, like a spring storm that came running through, and that ship, I'm not exactly sure when it was built, but I'm pretty sure it was like the early 90s. It was like a toy ship in a bathtub. Everything was just everywhere. So it is really important that we pick the right ship and the right itinerary because if we're picking something that goes through the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, it is almost always glass. So
Wow.
you get out and you just can't believe it. It almost looks like the lakes in New Hampshire on like a typical morning where like before the boats come out, it's like it's beautiful. Um, the other thing that we took about look into with that is the fact that we have um, where you're positioned on the ship. So there is a specific area of these ships that the rooms are going to be less susceptible to any of the motion. So we always go for that. But remedies that work really well, those pressure point bands are amazing. Have you ever
Yeah, I
used
use those.
those?
I use those in the car. Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes a difference. I don't understand the science, but it works. And I do think that I use typically Bonine, which is kind of like a Dramamine, but it's non-drowsy.
Hmm.
And I actually don't take anything. My family uses that. And that works out really well for that as well. I definitely say if you have somebody that is really prone to motion sickness, sometimes the patch that you can get from your doctor can be helpful, but there's a lot of drawbacks to that one. So I kind of go with the idea that unless you really, really need that, the pressure point bands and the bonine, compared with all of the things that we just talked about as the ship choice and the itinerary, is really where we're going to make the most of that happen.
I want to give
Um,
motion sickness people one more thing. That is, it sounds like maybe a alternative to the doctor ear patch. I
uh-huh.
did get from my acupuncturist like these ear beads, and it helped me on a flight one time a lot. So I would, if you have
Okay.
an acupuncturist, I know that sounds really weird, but they do help a little bit. So I'd imagine they would help on a boat as well.
Yeah, I would think so. I've never heard of that, but that's interesting because I do think that although ship motion is very different than cars or planes, there are some similarities for sure, especially if you get that feeling in your belly where you're like, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Um, Also, when you're on the ship, if you feel any motion sickness, getting in the water, like in the pool or a hot tub, helps tremendously. And also, strangely enough, Granny Smith apples.
Oh,
They
funny.
work really, really well. So,
My mom
all of
used to
those
always tell
things.
me McDonald's French fries. So I like I
I
like her
like that.
solution.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I love that one. My biggest thing for motion sickness for people on a cruise ship is I don't want to have that keep you off of a ship. So,
Right.
what I generally will suggest is a 3 or 4 night cruise so that it is a short experience that even if you're not loving it, you can, it's over relatively soon. They also don't go too far from land, so it gives you like a little taster of it. Full disclosure, I don't like those because they're way too short. Like I'm
Yeah.
looking at a 15-night transatlantic cruise right now that I'm just about ready to put money down on. But you can't start with that, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
build up to that and make sure that it's something you're going to love. So, any other motion sickness thoughts that you have before we move
No,
on?
I think that's it. That helps
Okay.
a lot.
All right. The other thing that you brought up, which I think this is something that I talk to almost every first time cruiser about, and it's the safety and emergency protocols. Again, we're going to go back to the media and understand that every time something happens, especially on a cruise ship, the media comes out in full force. So, looking at the realities of what this is important. But when you think about the things that could happen on a cruise ship, are there specific things that make you more nervous or that you're curious about?
I think the things that go through my mind, which these are probably kind of ridiculous, but I think of getting like like it runs out of gas or gets stranded at sea or a storm happens, like you were saying, and actually people get, it gets turned over or something kind of ridiculous like that. I think that's really it from a safety precaution. I mean, obviously germs, like if you're that concerned about germs, you probably shouldn't be anywhere other people are. So
Right,
yeah.
right. So I think it's funny, you said it might be silly, but honestly, when you think about Hollywood and the movies that we've seen, obviously Titanic comes to mind, but there was also that one that was out of Gloucester, um, with the fishing boat. I can't remember.
Manchester by the Sea.
Yes, like there's all these visions in our heads, and we think about a cruise ship, we're like, that's what we imagine. The first thing is these cruise ships are really large, so they're not going to be quite the same as what we have seen in these situations. In fact, I'm going to share a photo on Instagram along with this episode of the difference in the size of the Titanic and
Mm.
the current cruise ships because I saw that in a training once and I was like, holy cow, I have no idea that it was that different. It was a peanut of a ship for sure. Um, but I think that the first thing to know is that the cruise ships have the best weather departments. So they're really aware of what storms are coming, um, and they're able to go around them. One of the things that you'd notice in a cruise contract is it says that they have a planned itinerary, but they don't guarantee that you're actually going to get to any of those ports because if a storm were to come in, they're going around it. And so that is one of those scenarios that they're constantly monitoring that. They have shoreside people that are doing it, and then also the captains on the ship that are doing it as well. And that's something to know. My parents and my sister got stuck on a cruise ship once. They were on Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas, and it was supposed to be a 5 night journey, and it ended up being a 7 night because a storm hit the Florida area where they were supposed to go back to. So all they did was they hung out in Mexico for an extra 2 nights and then made their way back.
Sounds awful. Just
Right?
kidding.
Right? My dad was like texting me. He's like, "Hey, looks like we're gonna get stuck here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "And they said that we've got plenty of food, and they're just gonna make the trivia games last longer, and all of that stuff." So they have plans for all of that. Um, the other thing is they do bring a lot of extra fuel. So they never have just enough. They bring plenty of extra, especially during hurricane season when anything could happen and that they could have to divert and do something different. And that is something that I think is a genuine worry for a lot of people. Like we're going to be out in the middle of nowhere. That's kind of the vision that people get. And then they think like they're going to get stuck. When one of my favorite things to do actually at night on a cruise ship is to stand out on board and look at all the other cruise ships in the area and try
Yeah.
to like identify them. And then there's an app you can use. So I usually try to do it on my own first and then look at the app to see how right I was or wrong, which to be honest is really more like it. But if you were to have an emergency, they're all
Just
doing
swim on over.
right. Yeah, swim over. They'll come and get you. And that is one of the things that I think is another thought that people just think that you're out in the middle of nowhere. Again, Titanic is an example. They showed that there was nobody coming. Well, if you're out on a Bahamian cruise or a Caribbean cruise, you'll literally see the skyline. They're not close enough to touch, but they're more than close enough to get to you if you happen to need something. They come and do that sort of thing. So
Okay, that's awesome and super reassuring. And
yeah.
I think the worst case scenario would probably never happen, but it's good to at least know that if it does, they have a backup plan.
They do. And speaking of worst case scenarios, let's talk about lifeboats for a moment because that is something that I personally, when I first was going to go on a cruise, I researched the heck out of that because, again, I had seen Hollywood's depictions of all of these things and thought, there's no way. Hey, travelers, it's time for another review of the week. This one is called Like Listening to Your Travel Besties. They write, just listen to Talk Travel to me and I'm hooked. The info on Disneyland was top notch, and the hosts have fantastic chemistry. It felt like chatting with friends who really get travel. That's the best compliment we could ask for. Thanks for the love, and if you want to hear your review on the show, leave us a note. Now back to the episode. There is a international organization, the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS, and they set the requirements for safety on cruise ships. So it doesn't matter if your ship is flagged in the Bahamas or Italy, wherever it is, you have the same standards. And they require that you have 125% of the total number of passengers able to be on a lifeboat or life preserver, life raft kind of thing.
Wow.
75% of them, right? So there's no problem. You're getting a seat on the lifeboat.
We don't
And
need to
they're
push off Jack.
exactly. 75% of them actually have to be lifeboats that are rigid hull. So they're like the actual boats that have motors. They have bathrooms, Emily. Like,
Okay, I'm taking one of those. We're
right?
like, I'm gonna take this for a spin.
I have wanted to try so many times because they do drills. And so you'll see sometimes when you're in a port that they'll be actually practicing with the crew. I've always been like, could I volunteer? I'll sit in it. It has a formed seat. You got to put your life jacket on, like the whole
Oh,
9 yards. But
fun.
I'm like, come on. Like, so that is one of those things too that I always feel like people just don't understand that it's built for this. It's not like they're
Yeah.
going to give you one of those light orange life jackets and just throw you into the water and let you chum for sharks. Like that's not how it's going, right?
Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck.
Oh, here comes Jaws.
Yeah, you hear the noise, the Jaws theme in your head as you're looking around. Like, no. It's totally cool. Um, the one other thing I did want to mention, just because it does come up, and you said something about getting sick. one of the things that ends up being such a notable thing that gets mentioned in the media is norovirus. I hear
Mm.
people, and you might see it like, I shouldn't read comments on social media, but I still haven't learned my mistakes here. People will say, like, it's a giant floating petri dish, and I don't, who would want to go do that, blah, blah, blah. And I laugh every time because in my previous career, I used to license childcare programs for the state of New Hampshire, and then I worked for 15 years in them myself. Those places are far dirtier and are transmitting every virus you can imagine, as is the grocery cart,
I was just going to say.
right? Like, the difference here is Shaw's and Market Basket and, Publix, whatever it happens to be, they don't have to report illnesses to the CDC. Cruise ships have to do a report after every single sailing saying how many people had an intestinal disturbance, how many people had to be seen for motion sickness or any of that kind of stuff. So that is where you see that differential. And in reality, you see people, the crew, washing everything. I mean, elevator buttons. They go ride the elevator, they wash every elevator button, they all the handles. Where do you see that anywhere else in the world?
No, not even at a hotel.
No. And you all you see is the grimy fingerprints and you're like, has that been there since 1972? Like, yeah.
This actually brings me to another question which you touched on, but there must be a doctor or several doctors on board.
Yes, there is at least one medical doctor on board and typically 2 to 4 nurses. And then you also have like the medical assistants and people like that. So if you really just have like, I have a headache, you can go down there and like, get some Tylenol, that sort of thing. But there is a full medical staff. There is all kinds of operation. And I did have to go down there once. My daughter got the norovirus on one cruise, and they were fabulous. They also took care of her and then sent us back to the room and would not allow us to leave our room for
Smart.
24 hours. So there are a lot of things, but they're fabulous people. So it's all there if you have an emergency. One thing you do see sometimes, quite often, I would say, is that people have a medical emergency. They can handle a lot on the ship, but if they can't, they call in the Coast Guard. So I have been on a couple different sailings where the Coast Guard shows up literally with the basket and they load the person in and they take them off. I've been on a ship once where there was somebody that had a medical emergency. We were close enough to land that the ship turned around to bring them back to land and then, continued on our cruise. So there's a lot of protocols, but they're pros.
Yeah.
They deal with this all the time. So it gives me a real sense of security in that way. It's like I don't have to worry about it. And if it is my family that we're gonna have to deal with something, that they've got it covered. So, any other safety thoughts you had?
I think that's pretty thorough for me. That's my,
Okay.
yeah, my biggest concern is just sinking into the bottom of the ocean, becoming part of Atlantis.
Oh my gosh, I know. And I think that that's something that a lot of people worry about. And I will say, I don't think everybody is willing to admit it. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation because I bet so many people are either cleaning their house or in their cars right now going, oh my God, I was wondering that too.
Don't
And
worry, I'll let my imagination handle it for you.
I love that. I love that. So another thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting because this is hugely a big conversation that we have nowadays, and that is about food allergies, and quite just picky eaters sometimes. So what kind of a situation would you be concerned about in that area?
So I was thinking of myself and my friend who is, so she's gluten free, and I am allergic to eggs and shellfish, and I think that's it. But I have, oh, like garlic and onions. There are things that I have to avoid or else I will
Mhm.
get sick. So it was kind of thinking of that. Like, I just was curious about, are there lots of different options for food? Is it like a cafeteria? Like, what if you need something made special? Do you bring your own food if you need special kind of snacks and things like that? So how does that all work?
Yeah, so this is one of those things that, again, when you're working with a travel professional, that's a conversation that we would have at the outset, and then we would match you to the right cruise line. Cruise lines are not all the same. So I can say without throwing any of them under the pier.
Water.
Yeah, under the rudder. There are some for sure that I do not recommend for people that have allergies or people that, especially with a gluten allergy, they're like the sensitivity could be massive, right? Like you have some
Hmm.
people that just like it makes them uncomfortable, and other people that have celiac, which is like this is a life threatening kind of a situation. But there are cruise lines for sure that do a fabulous job. It's something we note on your reservation beforehand. It's something I communicate as the travel advisor just before you board. And it's also something that you're going to mention to your dining team when you go into a restaurant. One of the best is in terms of the food allergy situation is Disney Cruise Line. And I know a lot of people write that off because they think like, oh, I'm not going with kids. Cruising adults only on Disney Cruise Line is chef's kiss. Like the best. You can avoid most of the small people unless you're going to specific areas, and they treat food allergies exactly like you would hope that they would. So if you said, and I have clients, to be honest, Emily, that have 10 or more serious allergies, and they
Yeah.
go on that ship, and the waiter comes out and says, "Okay, here's the allergies. The chef is going to bring you your food." So literally, they come back. The actual head chef of the restaurant will come out and be like, "Let's go over your allergies again. I can certify that these are not going to be in any of this. This food is safe for you."
Wow.
Um, they also have areas in the buffet, so they would walk you around the buffet and say, these items are safe, avoid these items. Um, Royal Caribbean does a decent job. We have to communicate with them a little bit more sometimes, but they do a good job where like even at the buffet, you wouldn't notice it unless you noticed it, but there's things that are labeled like with little blue dots. So you know that that's something that has, let's say, garlic in it, or that's something that might have meat in it if you're not looking to eat meat, that sort of situation. So
Okay. So they really tailor it to like who's on the ship.
they do, they
That's
do.
awesome.
In terms of bringing your own food, you can bring your own food as long as it is factory sealed when you get on board. So if you are somebody that only can eat, I always joke about this because sometimes I do bring this on a Virgin voyage because their food is very not necessarily picky friendly. So I'm a picky eater. I don't have any allergies, but I am not adventurous when it comes to food at all. But I bring like Uncrustables, and as long as they're sealed in the package, I can bring them. So you can bring things to kind of like if you're a snacker of certain things and you want that, you could definitely do that.
Just can't bring a Tupperware full of brownies.
Exactly, exactly. And you
Okay.
can't bring fresh fruit or like meat, that sort of stuff that's just kind of like there. Can't bring your
Yeah.
leftovers from the restaurant that morning,
Yeah.
like that kind of stuff. But and then
Okay, that's
again,
good to know. And then is there I'm imagining there's probably a refrigerator in the room. So if you do have leftovers from the restaurant, you can bring it back or no.
so they have beverage coolers. And then if you're in a suite, they have full on refrigerators. But leftovers on the cruise ship is not really something that they do because there's not really a place to store it.
Hmm.
Not store it, I'm sorry. There's not really a place to heat it up again. So you just kind of leave whatever you're not going to have there, and there's always more food around the corner. So that's one of those
Okay.
things. Like, and in on most ships, they have even room service. So you can get room service. It is either free or it is small charges, not like in a hotel. So like people will be like, you know what I want at night on Disney Cruise Line? So many people get cold milk and warm cookies right before the bed, and they just get them delivered, and it's fabulous. So I do think that is one of the big matchmaking opportunities that we do is whatever someone's specific needs are, we match them to the right cruise line so that you don't have to worry so much about that.
Yeah.
Um, but that's
Okay,
a big
one more
thing.
question on the food. Is it
Yeah.
kind of just abundant? Like, are there lots of different restaurants to choose from? Is it a buffet style or does it differ from ship to ship? Like, I'm just actually, this is kind of a curiosity and excitement. I'm like, ooh, what are the food choices?
Yeah, so it does vary by the ship and by the cruise line, but everybody except for Virgin Voyages has a buffet. So there's always, and when I talk about a buffet, it would literally blow your mind because We don't have anything like it on land. It is a giant room, and there is just, you start at one end and you move to the other, and there's usually two, if not four, full stations across this room so that people are kind of spread out. Fresh baked breads and muffins and bagels. Like I've had bagels that are just warm because they were just cooked, like not because
Wow.
they heated them up. Fruit stations, like you wouldn't believe. Any kind of fruit that you'd ever want is there, and then all kinds of foods. Um, on Royal Caribbean, especially, they do a great job with having multicultural cuisines out there. So if you like Indian food, there's a whole section of Indian food just in the buffet. And then you also have your pizza and your burgers and spaghetti and all of that kind of stuff. But it is very plentiful. And then each ship also has main dining rooms, and that's where you can go to get like an actual table and someone to serve you. It's all included in the cost of your cruise fare. So you could have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in a main dining room and never step into a buffet if you
Wow.
wanted to. And then they all also have specialty restaurants that you can pay an upcharge to go to if you wanted to. For example, on Royal Caribbean, they have hibachi and a sushi place, so that's an upgraded charge. But you can also purchase a specialty dining package, and then have that all paid for ahead of time and not have to worry about it once you're on the ship. But it is definitely abundant. Um, you will not go hungry. I know a lot of people say like they go on a cruise ship and they do nothing but eat. That I've never experienced because I gotta tell you, I'm the girl that wants to go to every trivia game. There's scavenger hunts around the ship. I want to go and listen to the captain do the talk about his job and the things that he encounters. Like I'm doing all the things, and I'm doing the drive by of like the ice cream up on the pool deck. I'm just like, oh, I'll grab a soft serve ice cream and then just keep running to my next thing. But there is so much food, so
Okay,
much.
one last question on the food, but I think it
Yeah.
relates ship-wide. Tipping. Do you have to bring along extra money for tips?
So, no. And the reason for that is cruise lines do what they call standard gratuities. So, you pay ahead of time for a standard gratuity. So, on Royal Caribbean, it's $18.50 per person per night of your cruise. And then they split that up amongst your dining team, your stateroom host, all of that. So, you don't have to be nickel and diming. In fact, you really don't see cash at all on cruise ships. If you want to leave extra tip for somebody, like on Disney Cruise Line, you have the same waiters every single night of your journey. So sometimes I always bring the money, and then depending on the service level, decide, has my standard gratuity covered it or do I want to offer them a little bit extra? You could do that, but otherwise it's all covered before you get on the ship,
Okay, that is so
right?
interesting. I just pictured a big like cash grab. So
Right, right. And you also picture like the people being like trying to get better tips, trying to get,
yeah.
no, you get the standard, and then if people want to, they will eventually, they may offer something extra, but it is most common that people just go with the one that's the prepaid gratuities, and then you don't have to give it another thought. So,
Wow.
yeah, I like
Okay,
that.
that's all my food questions, I promise.
Okay. So another one that you brought up was something that was interesting to me, and it made me realize that people that haven't cruised really just don't live in the same space. And I think like for you as a copywriter, like you're probably surprised at all the things that I as a business owner don't understand about your area of expertise. And so I always thought to myself like they're curious about the bathrooms on the cruise ship, like outside of your room, right? Cuz everybody has a bathroom in their room. They can be tiny depending on the ship, or they can be massive depending on the stateroom category that you book. But you all have a private bathroom, there's no shared. But there are public facilities. And I happen to be somebody that is hugely sensitive about public bathrooms. Like, we actually, in our previous podcast, had a whole episode about the best bathrooms at Walt Disney World because there are differences. Public bathrooms aren't all the same.
So true.
Um, but the bathrooms on a cruise ship are going to be the cleanest public bathrooms you will ever encounter. Typically, they have one crew member that handles each section of bathrooms, and that's all they do is clean bathrooms. Not a job I'd want,
No.
but I'm not even kidding you. You could eat off the floor in most of these bathrooms.
Wow.
Spotless. So that is something that I have no concern about on any of the ships I've been on. Even the ones that like Virgin can be a little bit in need of services at night during the party scenes that go on just because there's so many people using them, but they have somebody that's going in there constantly. So most often you walk in there and before you can even leave there's someone arriving to clean the bathrooms. Like it's just a constant rotation. So that's a good thing. You don't have to worry about that. And I also will say that for a lot of people, I have actually one client that comes to mind that it has, I don't know what it's called, but she has a diagnosed fear of public bathrooms, public facilities. She just goes back to her room. So
Hmm.
whenever she needs to use the restroom, she just goes back to her room because no matter where you are on the ship, within 10 minutes you could be back in your private facility. So,
It
right?
is, you're so right. Like we have a different image having never been on one than of what it really is like. Like I'm thinking it's like a city floating on the ocean, but
Mhm.
that means it takes half an hour to get from one side of the city to the other.
Yeah. And it is absolutely a city. And one of my favorite things I ever did on a ship was actually do a behind the scenes tour. So I got to see like their laundromat and their cooking facilities and like all this really cool stuff. They did not show me the jail, but there is a jail, a brig on every cruise ship. Because if you're really bad and they need to put you somewhere, that's where you're going.
Okay,
So,
new fear unlocked.
right, right. They didn't show us that. I did ask because they were like, anything else you'd like to see? I'm like, how about the brig? And they were like, no, sorry, we can't take you there. I was like, is there somebody in there?
You're like, what if I break this?
Right, exactly. How bad do I have to be to get to see that? Um, but yeah, it is definitely a floating city. They generate their own power, like, all of that kind of stuff. But you literally could be at the very front of the ship and then need to go back to your room, which might be at the very back. And a 10-minute walk is pretty reasonable. It's probably going to be even less than that on most ships. So
Yeah.
if you do have a fear of that, and that's something that my client said to me when I first met her, she was like, "I'm really embarrassed to say this," and I was like, think of me like a bartender or a hairstylist. I've heard it all, and I am not here to judge. Like whatever it's look you need. And she said that, and I was like, oh yeah, like totally easy to do. And that's cruising is now one of her favorite things to do, just because
Aw.
that's easier for sure. Um, you had also mentioned something about crowds. Is that something that you like are concerned with on land or?
More like, okay, so you know how sometimes it's fine being around a bunch of people, but then you just need a break from it all. So in my mind, it's just people swarming around all the time. And then you go back to your room and it's like cramped and small. And so you just kind of feel whoosh, closed in. So I was curious about how that looks, how much free space, like if I were to put my arms out, how much can I twirl around?
So it depends on the room category you get, right? I do have some people, and people say this a lot, and I think it's fascinating. They're like, I'm only going to be in my room to sleep, so I don't care if it's a closet. No, that's never going to be me ever. But I always recommend balcony staterooms so that you have a balcony to go sit out there. They're set up with at least two chairs and a little table. Some of them are bigger and have like the lounge chairs, so you can literally just lay out there. Um, and then in your room, it's most of them are pretty big. I that's usually where I start with clients is like, here's the room, and I'm going to share some videos with you because you can definitely reach your arms out and not touch anything. If you're traveling with a larger family, you get a larger room, get two adults. You still have either a queen or a king size bed, depending on which cruise ship we're on. And then you have a couch and a little desk area. So like there's space. I will say that some of the cruise lines have teeny tiny bathrooms.
Hmm.
So I always look for the rooms that have the bigger bathrooms. And I can't show actually I could show you because we're on here. I'll have to share this with people on Instagram, but I have a list of every stateroom that's on every ship. So I can look specifically to see what the square footage of that room is, what the bathroom is in comparison. So I have a lot of information that I think the typical cruiser would be totally overwhelmed by and be like, oh. But I always recommend that ocean view room with a larger bathroom because it can get overwhelming out in the ship if you are more of a solitude kind of a person. Um, Eric and I gotta say, we are absolutely not partiers. So you won't find us at the New Year's Eve celebration in the middle of the ship that they on Royal Caribbean every first night of their cruise is their New Year's Eve.
Oh, fun.
Like I feel like 2,000 people are in this area and they're dropping balloons and the band playing and we don't go there. I usually watch it on YouTube so I can see like how crazy it was. I'm either on my balcony, literally having a glass of water before bed and relaxing, or there's a place called the Solarium, which I feel like is right up your alley. Big, beautiful chairs, natural lighting. People are kind of cocooned in their own little chair pods,
Okay,
reading
I'll be
books.
there the whole cruise.
Yeah, honest to God, it is. And the Royal Caribbean is known for that. Um, I can't wait to show you some pictures too of Icon of the Seas, which again is the biggest cruise ship in the world at the moment. It has the most secluded little reading spots of any ship I've ever been on. And that is a happy spot for me because I love to grab my Kindle and just relax.
Yeah.
Eric loves to grab his drawing pad and pencils and just go draw. So like there's a party happening for the people that want it or when you want in on it. But the minute you decide like I've had enough, there are at least equal numbers if not more numbers of places to go and just be quiet in your room or out on the decks and just hanging out. Um so I think that that's something that people oftentimes think like partiers are all on cruises.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does, again, depend on the cruise line. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus because this is very well known, but Carnival is kind of a party cruise. That's, they are people say they're the Walmart of the seas, which
I
I
think my
think that,
neighbors were on that because they came back. We're like, all we did was party.
uh-huh. And if that's what you're into, like I have a whole bunch of senior college students that wanted spring
Oh,
break this
yeah.
year. They're having a blast on carnival ships right now. But that's one of those things that, I don't put grown adults on carnival unless they ask for it. Like, we're looking at other options. Virgin Voyages has a beautiful led story time for adults because Virgin is adult only out on the back of the ship at night where they talk about all of the astrological signs and you're watching the stars, right?
Okay. Sign me. Here, where's my credit card?
Oh, that would make me so happy. Not that like I convince you to do it, but that it's like a thing that is scary, but then it's like no, no, it can be exciting. It
Okay,
can be.
last question on that. Is there like, so one thing I've always thought would be really fun because I don't drink, I don't party, I'm just not that person. But
Mhm.
I do like to dance and like have fun. And so is it literally a party going on all the time if you want it, or is it really only at night?
So at
Like I like to
night,
be in bed at 9, Kristy.
yes, and I'm with you. I was cracking up on our last. We just got off a Virgin cruise, and it was definitely we were in bed before 10 every night because that's just how we are too. Most of the dance parties are going to happen at night, but Virgin and Royal Caribbean have deck parties on the pool deck with dancing. So if you wanted to do that there, those both of them have like great live bands and DJs that people will be out there dancing. So that is definitely an option for sure. My favorite thing though, because I'm not an extrovert, I'm kind of like a wallflower until I'm really comfortable, is silent disco parties. Have you ever seen that?
Okay, that sounds amazing. You put on like headphones and you get to be in
Uh-huh.
your own little world.
Uh-huh.
We need that. In New
Yeah.
Hampshire?
We do. We do. We should throw some sort of a party where you literally, and you
For
get, it has like
real.
3 or 4 different channels. So you can like decide if you want. And the last one I was on, it was hysterical because most of the room had Journey in there because you could hear them. They were like singing, "Don't Stop Believing." Like it was so much fun. But there's that kind of stuff that goes on too.
Okay, that's awesome.
All right. So I feel like we've got you a little bit less nervous. Any other questions that you have?
Okay, I feel like you answered all my questions and then some, but I do have one more for you, of course. I'm like the queen of questions. What's the difference between a river cruise and an ocean cruise? Like, if you had to describe it in just a couple words.
So, ocean cruises are generally very large. They have pools and hot tubs and, kind of that fun party vacation vibe. River cruises, the ships are much smaller. They travel down rivers, mostly in Europe, although we do have some on the Mississippi, but I will tell you, don't. There's a whole lot of reasons we could do that at a different time, but European river cruises is really where that's at. They are much closer to land. And typically, what they do is every morning they dock in a new spot. You get off the ship to explore the countryside that you're at that moment. You get back on the ship at night and it travels to the next one. So that's kind of how that works. You're not spending days at sea, which is what's really common with ocean ships. And if you can picture just going down a river, you're very close to both sides. So you've got that scenario where you're not going to feel like you're out in the middle of nowhere because you truly aren't.
Yeah.
And then also most river cruises, their excursions that you do on land are included in your price. And then you just pick one of like 2 or 3 options. And then that's how you kind of plan out your day. They do not have pools for the most part. They do have hot tubs. And they also tend to be heavily filled with adults. There are some cruise
Makes
lines that do
sense.
take care of families, but for the most part, like Viking is a big one. That's probably the one that most people know of the most. They don't have children on their ships. So that it's kind of a more mature, quieter, somewhat fancier experience. And you have no buffets, that sort of thing. You're going to have like sit down dining with wine pairings and things like that. So,
Okay, good to know. Thank
yeah.
you. This is like really fun. Now we have to offline. We need to talk about all the destinations.
Yes, yes, exactly. I think that that could be a whole episode in its own for sure. And I'm sure that's coming at some point where we're going to talk about that because it is the difference in Alaskan cruises and Caribbean cruises, and they all have a very unique personality. I honestly, if I were just to kind of generally pick, I feel like you would be best on an Alaskan cruise because it's very port intensive. It's not so much of just the out in forever land. And I know you're a hiker, so being able to be out in the nature of Alaska feels like that would be something that would fit well for you. But I also could see you enjoying your books, and
That's for my 40th birthday with my girlfriends.
there you go. There you go. That would be so awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I love this. I love working with you on you helped actually, and I should point out if people haven't noticed the voice, you are the voice of the intro and outro of Talk Travel to Me Pod.
Well, thank you. That was really fun. It's been so fun listening to the show and like you feel like you're traveling alongside you guys and you guys are awesome. So,
Oh, thank you so much. It was
yeah.
awesome having you here with us today. For those of you listening, if you haven't had a chance yet to drop a review for us on Apple Podcasts, we would so appreciate that. It really helps the little podcast find its audience when you pop on there and tell us what you like about it. It helps us to figure out what's coming next, that sort of thing too. So we are so appreciative for everybody being along on this travel journey with us. And until next time, we'll see you real soon.
Thanks for listening to Talk Travel to Me. We hope this episode cracked open inspiration for the treasures that await you at your next dream destination. If you love the show, please review, subscribe, and share it with a friend. At Mickey Guru Travel Company, we're your trusted guides for theme parks, cruises, resorts, and more. Visit our website at mickey guru.com to learn more and book your vacation today.